My name is Bernice, and at 58, I never thought I would be sleeping on my son's couch after 35 years of marriage. I had always believed Thomas would be my safety net if things fell apart. Little did I know that on the same day, he offered me his lumpy sofa, saying, "Comfort should have stayed married." He was signing papers for a luxury apartment for Catherine, his mother-in-law. The betrayal cuts deeper coming from your own flesh and blood, especially when he knows every sacrifice I made for our family. I feel invisible in the very home I helped create through years of love and support. Before I share my story, I would love to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments, hit that like and subscribe button, and join me on this journey of heartbreak and healing that no mother should ever experience. It was the spring of 1988 when I first met Jack at Jefferson Memorial Hospital. I was 23, finishing my nursing degree, and he was 29, a promising surgical resident with a quick smile and determined eyes. We connected instantly over late-night coffee in the hospital cafeteria after grueling shifts. His ambition matched my practicality, and within 6 months, we were married in a small ceremony with our closest friends and family. Those early years were beautiful despite our tight budget and cramped apartment. We would dream about our future together, the house we would buy, the children we would raise, the life we would build. Jack talked about becoming chief of surgery, while I imagined creating a warm, loving home and advancing my nursing career. We were young and in love, convinced we could have it all. Thomas was born in 1990, our first miracle. I still remember Jack's face when he held our son, tears streaming down his cheeks as he whispered, "We made this perfect little human, Bernie." 3 years later, our daughter Elaine completed our family. I scaled back my hours to part-time, wanting to be there for our children's formative years. Jack supported my decision, though it meant postponing my plans to pursue a nurse practitioner degree. As the children grew, so did Jack's career. He was brilliant and driven, quickly becoming a respected thoracic surgeon. The longer hours and increasing responsibilities meant less time at home. I managed everything: the children's schedules, the household, the finances, while maintaining my nursing career. I turned down a charge nurse position that would have required more hours, knowing our family needed me present. When I mentioned this sacrifice to Jack, he seemed appreciative but distracted, already mentally preparing for his next surgery. By our 15th anniversary, I noticed a shift in our relationship. Jack was physically present but emotionally distant. Our conversations became transactional, focused on logistics rather than connection. "Will you be at Thomas's basketball game? Can you pick up Elaine from ballet?" The passionate discussions about our dreams and fears had disappeared, replaced by schedules and responsibilities. Jack's workaholic tendencies intensified as he approached 45. He would leave before dawn and return after the children were asleep, claiming the hospital needed him. I suggested couples counseling, but he dismissed it, saying, "We're fine, Bernie. This is just a busy period." That busy period stretched into years. I tried everything to reconnect: date nights, weekend getaways, even surprising him at the hospital with lunch. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the man I married, but they were fleeting. When Thomas left for college, and Elaine followed 3 years later, I hoped we would rediscover each other. Instead, the empty nest highlighted how empty our marriage had become. Still, we maintained the appearance of a happy couple. Holiday cards showed smiling faces at Thomas's college graduation, Elaine's wedding, family vacations we took but barely enjoyed together. Jack and I became experts at performing happiness while living parallel lives. I convinced myself this was normal after decades of marriage, that passion naturally faded into comfortable companionship. Looking back, I was blind to the warning signs that had been flashing for years. The end began with a text message. I was shopping for groceries when my phone pinged with a message clearly not meant for me. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Missed you this week." The sender was Allison R. from the hospital. My hands trembled as I abandoned my cart in the middle of the produce section and drove home in a daze. I confronted Jack that evening, showing him the message. He didn't deny it. Instead, his face hardened as he said, I was going to tell you after the holidays. After 32 years of marriage, he was going to wait until after Christmas to tell me he was having an affair with a 40-year-old anesthesiologist. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. 8 months, he replied, avoiding my eyes. But we've been unhappy for years, Bernie. You know that. I was stunned by his casualness, as if he were discussing a minor inconvenience rather than the destruction of our life together. I thought we were working through a rough patch, I said. I thought we were still fighting for us. Jack laughed without humor. We haven't been us in a decade. We're roommates who occasionally have dinner together. Despite the devastating revelation, I suggested counseling, clinging to the belief that 3 decades of history deserved another chance. Jack agreed, but his heart wasn't in it. After 3 sessions, he announced he was moving out. Allison understands me, he said. She sees me for who I am now, not who I was 20 years ago. The divorce process was brutal. Jack hired an aggressive attorney who questioned every financial decision I'd made during our marriage. Despite my part-time work throughout our relationship, his lawyer argued that I hadn't contributed equally to our assets. Jack wanted to sell our family home immediately, claiming he needed his equity for a new start. When I objected, he became cruel. You've let yourself go, Bernie, he said during a particularly heated argument. You stopped trying years ago. All you care about is the kids and your volunteer work. I'm still living, still wanting more from life than retirement planning and grandchildren. His words cut deeper than any surgical instrument he'd ever wielded. I had maintained my health, my appearance, my interests, but I'd also embraced aging naturally, something Allison, with her cosmetic enhancements, hadn't yet faced. I had proudly shifted some focus to our children because that's what I thought we both wanted. I had believed our vows meant something. The stress triggered a cascade of health issues. I developed insomnia, lost 15 pounds, and my blood pressure skyrocketed. My doctor prescribed medication and suggested therapy for situational depression. This happens more often than you think, she said kindly. Divorce after long marriages can be physically traumatic. After months of legal battles, we reached a settlement that left me with far less than I deserved for my years of support and sacrifice. The family home had to be sold, and my portion of Jack's retirement would only become accessible years later. At 58, I found myself essentially starting over with limited income and no permanent home. I reached out to Thomas, now 34, and established in his career as a financial analyst. He had a beautiful home in the suburbs with his wife Amanda and seemed financially comfortable. Mom, of course you can stay with us while you get back on your feet, he said when I called explaining my situation. We have plenty of space. His words were a lifeline, and I clung to them, grateful that my years of maternal sacrifice had created a safety net when I needed it most. When I first arrived at Thomas and Amanda's 2-story colonial with my 2 suitcases and a box of photo albums, they greeted me warmly. Thomas hugged me tightly, whispering, "It's going to be okay, Mom." Amanda showed me to their guest room with its queen bed and attached bathroom, saying I could stay as long as needed. They helped bring in my belongings, and that first evening, we shared a homemade dinner where they listened sympathetically to the final chapters of my marriage. Dad's being such an ass, Thomas said, shaking his head. I can't believe he's treating you this way after everything you've done for our family. Amanda nodded in agreement. You deserve so much better, Bernice. We're happy to have you here while you figure things out. That first week passed pleasantly. I kept to myself during the day while they worked tidying the house and preparing dinner as my contribution. I applied for nursing positions online and researched affordable apartments in the area. In the evenings, we would watch television together or play cards, almost like the family gatherings I had hosted for years. By the second week, I noticed subtle changes. Thomas seemed less enthusiastic about our evening conversations, often checking his phone or mentioning work he needed to complete. Amanda spent more time in their bedroom with the door closed. The dinners I prepared were met with polite thanks rather than the genuine appreciation from before. During the third week, I overheard them talking in hushed tones in the kitchen late one night when they thought I was asleep. "How long do you think she'll stay?" Amanda asked, her voice tight with tension. "I don't know," Thomas replied. "She's really struggling to find an affordable place." "We need to set some boundaries," Amanda continued. "My mother said we should give her a timeline, or she might get too comfortable." I retreated silently to my room, tears welling in my eyes. Catherine, Amanda's mother, had never approved of me always finding subtle ways to criticize my parenting or homemaking during family gatherings. The knowledge that she was influencing my son's attitude toward my presence was deeply painful. The next morning, Thomas approached me as I was making coffee. "Mom, we need to talk about some house rules," he began awkwardly. "Amanda works from home some days, and she needs quiet. Also, we usually meal prep on Sundays for the week, so you don't need to cook dinner every night." "Of course," I said, forcing a smile while my heart sank. "I want to be helpful, not disruptive." 2 days later, I returned from a job interview to find my belongings moved from the guest room to the living room. Amanda explained that her sister was coming for a long weekend and they needed the guest room. "The couch pulls out," she said brightly. "It's pretty comfortable." After the weekend, my things were not returned to the guest room. Instead, Thomas explained that they were converting it to a home office since both he and Amanda were working remotely more often. "The couch is just temporary, Mom," he assured me, though his eyes didn't meet mine. The temporary arrangement stretched into weeks. The pull-out couch had a bar that pressed into my back, making restful sleep impossible. I was given strict instructions about when I could use the kitchen and living area. "We have an important Zoom call at 9, or we're having colleagues over at 6, became common refrains relegating me to the back patio or local coffee shop for hours at a time. I became increasingly invisible in their home. They would make plans for dinner without including me. I would find the dishwasher emptied and reorganized because I put things in the wrong places. My toiletries were moved to the half bathroom downstairs because the main bathroom was getting cluttered. Each small humiliation built upon the last, but I swallowed my pride. I was a guest in their home, dependent on their generosity while I rebuilt my life. After decades of being the one who provided comfort and stability, the role reversal was disorienting and demoralizing. The discovery came unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon in April. Thomas and Amanda were both at their offices, and I was searching for an envelope to mail a job application. I opened the desk drawer in the living room where I had seen them store stationery and found a folder labeled Lakeview Property. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to find closing documents for a condominium purchase. Thomas and Amanda had bought a 2-bedroom luxury apartment in Lakeview Towers, an upscale retirement community known for its amenities and beautiful views of the city park. The purchase price made my eyes widen. They had spent nearly twice what my half of the family home sale had yielded. As I flipped through the papers, my confusion turned to shock. The deed listed the occupant as Catherine Wilson, Amanda's mother. According to the move and information, she would take possession of the property that very week. I sat heavily on the couch, my bed, as the realization washed over me. While I had been sleeping on a lumpy pull-out sofa, my son and his wife had purchased a luxury apartment for her mother. Catherine, who had a perfectly nice home in the next town over. Catherine, who had made no secret of her disdain for me over the years. Catherine, who was younger than me and fully capable of working, but had chosen early retirement after her husband's insurance payout. When Thomas and Amanda returned home that evening, I was waiting with the folder on the coffee table. They exchanged alarmed glances when they saw it. "Were you going through our things?" Thomas asked, his voice sharp with accusation. "I was looking for an envelope," I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. "But that's not the point. You bought Catherine an apartment." Amanda crossed her arms defensively. "My mother needed a place closer to us. Her arthritis makes the drive difficult." "And you didn't think to mention this to me while I've been sleeping on this couch for weeks." Thomas sighed heavily. Mom, you're only here temporarily. Catherine's situation is permanent. Temporary, I echoed. I've been applying for jobs and apartments every day, but everything is so expensive on a limited income. You know that. That's not our problem, Amanda interjected, then seemed to catch herself. I mean, we want to help, but we can't support everyone indefinitely. Everyone, I repeated incredulously. I'm your mother, Thomas. I raised you. I was there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. I put you through college. I postponed my own career advancement to be there for you and your sister. Thomas's face hardened in a way that reminded me painfully of his father. That was your choice, Mom. You chose to stay in an unhappy marriage. You chose to prioritize family over career. Don't put that on me. The difference, I said quietly, is that Catherine has options. She has her own home. She has retirement savings and alimony. I'm starting from scratch at 58 because your father decided 3 decades of marriage meant nothing. Thomas's response struck like a physical blow. Maybe if you'd made him happier, he wouldn't have left. There's a reason I'm more comfortable with Catherine than with you and Dad. She and Paul created a peaceful home. You and Dad were always tense, always performing happiness instead of actually creating it. I stared at my son, this person I had nurtured and loved, now a stranger, wielding my greatest insecurities as weapons. So that's why I get the couch, I asked, my voice breaking. Because I wasn't a good enough wife to keep your father. Because I didn't make you comfortable enough. He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but Amanda jumped in. We've been more than generous. Most of my friends think we're crazy for letting you stay this long. My mother would never impose like this. Impose? The word hung in the air between us. I see. Well, thank you for clarifying where I stand. I didn't realize asking my son for temporary help while I rebuild the life his father shattered was an imposition. Mom, Thomas said, his tone softening slightly. We do want to help, but comfort, you should have stayed married if that's what you wanted. Life is about choices and consequences. I gathered what dignity I had left and walked to the bathroom, locking the door behind me as tears streamed down my face. Through the door, I could hear their muffled conversation continue, Amanda's voice dominant and insistent. My son, who had once looked at me with complete love and trust, had become someone I barely recognized, someone who valued his mother-in-law's comfort over his own mother's basic needs. That night was the longest of my life. I lay on the pull-out couch every uncomfortable spring, a reminder of my new reality. The darkness gave my thoughts nowhere to hide, and they circled relentlessly. How had I raised a son who could be so callous? What had I done wrong as a mother, as a wife? Where would I go now that I understood I truly had no safety net? Sleep eluded me as I reviewed my relationship with Thomas throughout his life. I had been there for every milestone, large and small. I had attended every parent-teacher conference, stayed up, helping with science projects, driven carpools, cheered at games, consoled after disappointments. I had worked part-time to be present while still contributing financially to his education. There were sacrifices no child ever sees. The promotions declined because they would require travel. The friendships that faded because family commitments took priority. The personal dreams deferred year after year because someone else's needs came first. I had believed these choices were investments in a family bond that would withstand any challenge. As dawn broke, I reached for my phone and called Elaine in London, where she had moved 5 years earlier for a technology position. Despite the time difference, she answered immediately. Mom, are you okay? It's the middle of the night there. I couldn't hold back the tears as I explained the situation with Thomas and Amanda, the apartment for Catherine, the painful confrontation. Oh, Mom, Elaine sighed. I'm so sorry. Thomas has always been weird about Amanda's family. Remember how he skipped your birthday to attend her cousin's wedding? I didn't realize it was a pattern, I admitted. I thought he was just trying to make a good impression back then. Look, I can send you some money to help with a security deposit on an apartment, Elaine offered. I wish I could do more, but our flat barely fits the three of us as it is. Elaine had a partner and stepchild in their small London apartment. I appreciate that, sweetheart. I'm just feeling so worthless. After everything I've done to be treated like an inconvenience. You are not worthless, Elaine said firmly. Dad is an ass for what he did, and Thomas is being horrible. But this isn't a reflection of your value, Mom. This is about them. We talked until Elaine had to leave for work, her support a balm to my wounded heart. Yet after we hung up, the reality remained unchanged. I was essentially homeless, my financial resources dwindling, my confidence shattered, and my physical health suffering from stress and inadequate rest. That afternoon, I reached my emotional rock bottom. While applying for yet another position that would barely cover basic living expenses, I received an email from Jack's attorney with paperwork requiring my signature to release funds from the sale of our home. Attached was a personal note from Jack. Bernie, Allison and I are moving to Phoenix for a fresh start. I've accepted a position at Mayo Clinic. Please sign these promptly so we can complete our purchase. Hope things are working out with Thomas. The casual cruelty of his assumption that I was being cared for when he had left me with so little after decades of partnership broke something inside me. I sat in the local library where I had been using the computers, put my head in my hands, and sobbed quietly until a kind librarian brought me tissues and a cup of tea. Bad day, she asked gently. Bad year, I replied with a watery smile. Whatever it is, she said, patting my shoulder. Remember that you deserve better than whatever is making you cry in a public library. We all do. Her simple kindness was the catalyst I needed. If a stranger could see my worth, perhaps it was time I recognized it too. I had spent my life caring for others, as a nurse, as a wife, as a mother. Now, for perhaps the first time, I needed to care for myself with the same dedication. I straightened my shoulders, dried my tears, and made a decision. I deserved better, and I would find it. Not through my son's reluctant charity or my ex-husband's guilty conscience, but through my own strength and resilience. The next morning, I texted Susan, a former nursing colleague I had kept in touch with over the years. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near the hospital where we had both worked. Susan arrived in scrubs, having just finished a night shift, but her face brightened when she saw me. Bernice, she exclaimed, enveloping me in a hug that smelled of hospital disinfectant and coffee. It's been too long. Well, honestly, you look exhausted. I laughed despite myself. That's because I am, in every possible way. Over the next hour, I shared everything. The divorce, Thomas's betrayal, my financial situation, my dwindling options. Susan listened without interruption, her experienced nurse's eyes assessing me with professional concern. First things first, she said when I finished. You need stable housing and income. I actually might be able to help with one of those. My brother owns a small rental property near the hospital. It's nothing fancy, but he's been looking for a tenant, and I bet he'd give you a break on the deposit if I vouch for you. Susan, that would be amazing, but I'm still job hunting. The rental market is so competitive. The hospital is desperate for experienced nurses right now, Susan replied. We've had a wave of retirements and the travel nurses are too expensive long-term. Have you applied there yet? I shook my head. I thought they'd only want full-time staff. They're offering all sorts of arrangements to attract talent, part-time flexible scheduling, even some remote triage positions. With your experience, you'd be a catch. She pulled out her phone. I'm texting you the contact information for our nurse manager. Use my name when you reach out. By the end of our coffee date, I had a promising lead on both housing and employment. Susan's practical assistance reminded me that I had built connections throughout my life and career. Connections that existed independently of my roles as Jack's wife or Thomas's mother. Over the next week, I followed through on both opportunities. Susan's brother Martin showed me a one-bedroom apartment above a converted garage. It was small, but clean, with a tiny kitchen and surprisingly good natural light. "Susan told me what you're going through," he said kindly. "I can work with you on the deposit if you can commit to a year lease." The interview at the hospital went equally well. My former supervisor had retired, but the new nurse manager was impressed by my experience and references. "We can start you at 24 hours weekly," she offered. "With your background, there's also opportunity for training new staff, which comes with a pay differential." With housing and income tentatively secured, I returned to Thomas and Amanda's home with a newfound confidence. They were in the kitchen preparing dinner when I arrived, their conversation stopping abruptly when I entered. "I wanted to let you know I'll be moving out within 2 weeks," I announced calmly. "I found an apartment and accepted a nursing position at Jefferson Memorial." Thomas looked surprised. "That's great, Mom. Do you need help with the move?" "No, thank you. I've made arrangements." The truth was, I had very little to move, just my clothes and personal items, but I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing how little I possessed after 35 years of building a home and family. "Are you sure it's not too soon?" Amanda asked, her tone suggesting concern while her expression revealed relief. "We don't want you to rush into something unstable." "I appreciate your concern," I replied evenly, "but I'm quite capable of making sound decisions. I've been doing it my entire adult life after all." Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly prepared for my new beginning. I opened a separate bank account, had my mail forwarded to my new address, and began working part-time at the hospital. The familiar environment and purposeful work helped restore my sense of identity beyond ex-wife and unwanted mother. I also reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the chaos of divorce. My nursing school roommate Jane invited me to her book club. My former neighbor Edward, now also divorced, asked me to join a walking group that met on weekends. A community of support began forming around me, reminding me that family extends beyond blood relations. Small victories built my confidence. Securing my own apartment key, receiving my first independent paycheck in years, navigating public transportation to work. Each step forward was a declaration of my capability and worth. By the time moving day arrived, I had developed a quiet determination that surprised even me. I packed my belongings efficiently, leaving the pull-out couch neatly made with fresh sheets for the next unwanted guest. Thomas and Amanda were uncharacteristically subdued, perhaps finally recognizing the magnitude of their callousness. "Do you have everything you need?" Thomas asked as I prepared to leave. "I have everything that matters," I replied, meeting his gaze directly. For the first time since I had arrived at their home, my son looked uncertain, even regretful. "Mom, he began, then stopped. "It's okay, Thomas," I said, not unkindly. "We all make choices about who and what we value. I've made mine, and you've made yours. I hope Catherine enjoys her new apartment." With those words, I walked out the door, not as a defeated woman, but as someone reclaiming her dignity and future. 1 year later, I stood in my small but sun-filled apartment, arranging flowers in a vase, a gift to myself to celebrate 12 months of independence. The space had become truly mine, decorated with second-hand furniture I had lovingly refinished, and photographs of moments that brought me joy. My nursing career had flourished beyond expectation. What began as a part-time position had evolved into a role as a patient advocate and staff educator, drawing on both my clinical experience and the emotional intelligence developed through decades of caregiving. My colleagues valued my contributions, and for the first time in years, I felt professionally fulfilled. My relationship with Thomas remained complicated. After 3 months of silence following my departure, he had reached out with a text message. "How are you doing, Mom?" I had responded politely but briefly, establishing a pattern of limited contact on my terms. We now met monthly for coffee at a neutral location, our conversations carefully avoiding the past, while tentatively building something new. Amanda's mother, Catherine, had indeed moved into the luxury apartment, but ironically, the arrangement had not provided the family harmony they expected. Catherine's constant presence and opinions had created tension in their marriage, and after 6 months, she had decided the apartment was too small and moved back to her original home, though she kept the property as an investment. Jack had attempted a reconciliation of sorts after his relationship with Allison deteriorated in Phoenix. "I made a mistake, Bernie," he admitted during an unexpected phone call. "This new life isn't what I thought it would be." His loneliness and regret might once have moved me, but I had developed clarity about my worth. "I wish you well, Jack," I replied, "but that chapter of our lives is closed." Elaine had visited from London during the holidays, staying in my small apartment and marveling at my transformation. "You seem happier now than you've been in years, Mom," she observed. "More yourself." "I am," I agreed. "I didn't realize how much of myself I had submerged in being Jack's wife and your mother. I love those roles, but they're not the entirety of who I am." That evening, as I put the finishing touches on dinner preparations for the small gathering of friends coming to celebrate my Independence Day, I reflected on the painful journey that had led to this moment of contentment. The betrayals by Jack and Thomas had devastated me, but they had also freed me from patterns and expectations that had limited my growth for decades. I had learned that family isn't always defined by blood or marriage certificates. It can be created through authentic connection and mutual respect. My new family included Susan and her brother Jane from book club, my walking group friends, and colleagues who had become confidants. They valued me for exactly who I was, not for what I could provide or sacrifice. Most importantly, I had discovered that it's never too late to reimagine your life. At 59, I had built a new identity and community from scratch. The woman who had once crumpled in tears at a public library was now strong enough to set boundaries, pursue goals, and create joy on her own terms. As my doorbell rang, announcing my first guests, I smiled at the realization that had become my mantra. Your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. It exists independently of others' recognition, waiting for you to claim it for yourself. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal or disappointment? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin after the ones we thought were most important have ended. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are worthy of respect and love, especially from yourself.